When would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. My name is Van Wolf. I'm the VP of Platform Engineering for Repay. My purview is DevOps, infrastructure, IT. Certainly, cost savings is a key element across all of those practices. Um, a fun fact about me, I guess I've got my ham radio set up here behind me, so I'm an amateur radio operator, and so I'll share my call sign if anybody wants to reach out at any point.
Great, thank you. And we'll make it a bit more interactive than the
Uh-huh.
usual, webinar type of talks. I know, Van, you have told me multiple horror stories around preventable waste and costing a lot. Tell me about a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've had quite a few. Most of them are configuration related. So somebody configures an Elasticsearch cluster, but they don't really understand the ramifications of cost. And then you end up with a $20,000 bill. Or, there's a big push for artificial intelligence and using the tooling that the cloud providers give you for artificial intelligence. And you could end up with a large bill there as well. We had something similar with SageMaker, right? Where it just wasn't well understood how the product operated, and it doesn't take very long to generate a pretty big bill.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think AI is making this problem worse. And other than these stories, we did a recent research, and on average, the respondents said that they make about 25 grand worth of mistakes that are preventable, that they know of, that could have been prevented. So it's definitely a big problem out there. But everything, the cost of a mistake is pretty high in the cloud, right? In terms of savings and waste optimization. But there's the other side of it too that you were explaining to me, right? The team side.
Yeah, absolutely. We end up with time. There's so much time loss just trying to find the savings, to track down the misconfigurations. The team then has to go back and rework the infrastructure to support a better, more efficient pattern. I mean, we've seen that again in the AI space. I think Kendra is a great shortcut to get to having an indexable search engine that you can point your AI at, but it's expensive and there are cheaper ways to do it. And so then you have to rework your app. So the cost isn't just the financial cost, it's the cost of, how do we do this more efficiently?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to large media entertainment customer of ours, and they mentioned that having preventive policies in place is not only saving them a lot of money, but hundreds of engineer times, right? And it's a way to quote unquote sell optimization and policy and governance to engineers too. Like, hey, if we have this policy in place first, it will save a lot of time for your teams afterwards as well. Like even opening, reading a Jira ticket, getting into console or fixing the script for a certain
Mhm.
optimization takes a lot of time, a lot of Slack messages, emails, and so forth.
Yeah, and I think there's a great, there for the things that you can identify that are just patterns that you don't want to support. Putting policies in place to block that activity so you don't have to go back is great. For some of these newer, and again, not to focus on AI too much, but you need the team to be able to experiment, and sometimes you need just the reporting just to understand what they're doing and move quickly when you see changes in the cost profile. I think that's something where the tool helps in both cases, right? You've got the ability to do the blocking and tackling on things that are just usual suspects that you just don't want to allow in the enterprise. But then you have to also allow that experimentation. So the reporting is also very important.
Cool. So next up, let's talk about what is a waste problem, man? How would you describe it?
Well, it's broken out into two different categories. So design flaws, like in your IAC, where you've got retention periods that are set incorrectly that are just causing waste. And then you have timing failures, like situations where you don't get the reporting when someone leaves a system up and they don't disable the system or delete the system. We've had developers deploy RDS systems for testing. They want to restore backup and run a process, but then they leave them up. And most of the time they're pretty big, so they cost money every single hour. And every hour you're losing money. On the design side, certainly anything you can do on the front end with the design where you're actually um, enforcing a pattern prevents that waste from occurring in the future.
Yeah, and this is exactly why you need both sides of the house, right? Shift left and runtime.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you've got to do it in the code and you've got to do it on the reporting side, and it's a continuous feedback loop where as you identify things that you want to operationalize as code, you bring that back in from the reporting, you educate the teams so that they understand that you're implementing those policies to protect the business and save money, and they're not just losing access to things or you cause some type of service interruption, but you need both.
So I'm going to say, so now shifting left. Tell us a bit more about shifting left.
Yeah, it's primarily just infrastructure as code, right? Let's codify our savings and our process, how we want to operate the most efficiently, get the reporting and build the reporting to basically identify where we're not efficient, and then take steps to codify those efficiencies, right? It's proactive. We're going to codify this so that we prevent spend. And then there's the reactive side where we're reporting, and you want to have that reporting always feeding back into the code so that you're getting more efficient every single cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great way that I hear from other people too, of teaching the developers too, right? So in the ISE, right, when they're committing their infrastructure as code, they're getting educational messages around, hey, set this log retention period to V because our organization has this policy, here's the link to the policy, and that sort of stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So a lot of people ask us, what shift left policies can we really implement for FinOps, right? I know they're more known for security, but there are tons of policies that you use, others use, some of our customers use, open source community members use too. And here's the list of a few popular ones. Which ones stand out for you the most?
Well, they're almost in priority order here. Cloud tagging is at the top of our list. I mean, no matter who you work for or which cloud provider you utilize, the tagging is critical. I mean, especially in AWS, like everything is driven by tags, and most teams are not great. Even with infrastructure as code, tagging just seems to be something that is a challenge for every organization. And being able to codify how we tag and then have the tool actually tag things that aren't tagged based on specific metrics and identifiers is huge, right? So there's never a situation where you can't have something tagged appropriately. That is I think top of my list. Resource modernization is another huge one. Like, we don't want to spend more money for disks that perform less optimally. And also, if we have an opportunity to save money, we can codify that. Again, those two, 1 and 2, are really at the top of my list. I think we talked about log rotation. That's definitely an area. I mean, CloudWatch gets expensive quickly, and I think people, just when you're click opsing, it's really easy to make mistakes. Even when you have infrastructure as code, setting those incorrectly can be really expensive. So having a policy to just enforce that is critical.
Absolutely. Another one I put in there, I saw a lot of people start using GPUs in the cloud too. And that's definitely a trend because you talked about AI. AI in the cloud is easier to get, at least, because GPUs are definitely difficult to buy and source. I saw a few people actually validating those policies too, because some cloud providers have a family for GPUs as well, and that really, can become a bit expensive.
Yep, agreed.
And then some of the best practices. How would you advise someone who's getting started or is still in early stages?
Yeah. No, I think this list is perfect, right? Start small, get your reporting in place, make sure that you understand how things are configured. The reporting that comes out of Stacklet is extremely helpful to review with the teams, to understand their infrastructure, and then you start to warn the teams and you set those policies before you actually set the policies in the tool, right? You agree on how you want to operate the systems. You get the reporting, you educate the teams, then you start blocking. So I think the key here is to use the reporting tools and build your plan. And again, starting small. And then from there, you get that agreement with the engineering teams to start to put those locks in place, the blocks in place to prevent that spend. So again, I think that fourth bullet point, educate, don't just enforce, is critical, right? And then, of course, if you have situations where you find something that you need to fix, having that remediation plan, right? Like we talked about Kendra a little bit. Kendra can get quite expensive. And, if you need to change technologies or change the way you use the technology, make sure that it's something that's in scope, something that you can actually accomplish, right? I think that, again, starting small is probably critical in this case.
Yep, absolutely. And now we talk about runtime governance, right? So what some people call the wild, wild west. You can have all the ISCs in place, but some of the FinOps matrix can still, you only understand them better when things are provisioned, and B, they always be click ops, that the term that you use, and scripts and all that kind of stuff too. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean this runs the gamut, right? It could be anything from something as simple as you've got a blue-green implementation and for some reason both colors are running, right? I mean that's something that you don't want to have, but it's running. It may not necessarily be you're using the wrong instance type, but it's just the way the systems are operating. So you're going to see an elevated, EC2 cost. It could be again in the AI space, lots of AI tools. You don't always know how expensive they're going to be until users start really hitting them. And then you've got to kind of take steps to mitigate that. And in some cases you can, and in some cases you may have to change technologies. But again, it's all in the reporting, right? Once you get that reporting, you can start taking those steps. And again, it's that same feedback loop, right? Identify it in the runtime with the reporting, and then you feed that back into your infrastructure as code and make the necessary adjustments.
Cool. So let's sum it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this slide states it very clearly. Governance by design equals waste prevention by default, right? Like we want to do the infrastructure as code to enforce the policies to prevent the spend. Again, like you could have a situation where you're chasing all of these customers, your internal customers, they're spending on various cloud services. You can chase them, you can talk to them, you can try to get them to turn off the services, but it's whack-a-mole, right? You're chasing after these teams and you're trying to get them to make the changes to save money, where you could actually go in here as infrastructure as code and do that up front. And then there's no chasing, right? You don't have to rework, you don't have to do all of that extra communication, right? You're just doing it in the code. It prevents it up front. And again, I think small changes have the biggest impact. You start with small, start with your top 5 list and go from there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.